2NURFM, a broadcast service of the University of Newcastle.
Tuesday is Politics Day. We always love getting down into the world of politics and federal politics. We're talking about this morning with Jim Jose. Good morning, Jim. This
morning, Mark.
It's 18C today, and those three letters have caused all sorts of havoc and heartache over the last 5 years or so, haven't they?
Well, yes, they've been sort of in and out of the news, and they seem to crop up sometimes when there's a slow news day, but they seem to crop up on a fairly regular basis. And this morning we heard that the Prime Minister is putting to the party room some suggestions about how they might get around this. Whether this is going to solve the problem that that allegedly exists with the Race Discrimination Act, that remains to be seen.
So let's have a look back. Let's take a step back first. 18C, as the law stands at the moment, what is it and what is it designed to protect against?
Well, basically it provides protection against abusive type speech that might cause offence or be insulting and similar types of bad free speech, if you like. And part of the issue here, Mark, is that people have sort of looked to this as some form of absolute or, any curtailment on free speech, on the right to be say whatever you like, is somehow curtailing free speech. And the Racial Discrimination Act aimed in its inception to attempt to steer a path which enabled people to be able to speak relatively freely, but at the same time, if people engaged in hate speech or stirring up various forms of hatred, then there was rights of recourse that people could say, look, hang on, that's not acceptable, and I want to take some form of action to sort of curb your forms of abuse.
Now, we know that some sections of government wanted the law to be completely repealed and thrown out the window. There has been very, very recently a move to sort of make a compromise, sort of halfway in the middle. Can you let us know a little bit about how that's come down from the Prime Minister?
Well, at the moment, it appears that the Prime Minister is suggesting that they replace the word offence with harass, and that lifts the sort of level of proof and form or level of offence in a way that sort of makes it less, I guess, what some people criticise as being trivial. Now, the really curious thing here, I guess, if we think about free speech, that governments generally, historically speaking, have tended to sort of want to rein in free speech because they only want to hear the things that please them. They don't want to hear things that don't please them. And part of the principle of free speech is that you actually have to accept that the right of free speech means, and it means nothing unless it's defending people's right to say unpopular things. But it's one thing to say something that's unpopular. It's quite another to be abusive and offensive in the sense of stirring up hatred and speaking patently untruths that are going to lead people to act in ways that may lead to violence and so forth.
I guess when you talk about speaking things that are completely untrue and taking us down that road, and of course the sort of language that can be violent in itself, I guess those are the sort of things that have been, with this new potential amendment, have been kept in place while still allowing people to a point say what they like in the guise of free speech, but potentially, well, if I say something that you don't like, you can't run off and say, hey, 18C says that you're upsetting me. So would this not be seen as a fairly healthy balance where most people are going to be okay?
Well, on balance, Mark, I think that's probably a fair assessment. It's really the issues have been trivialised to some extent, where a number of, shall we say, critics of 18C have basically looked at it in terms of upsetting people's sort of emotionally. And even in the case that gave sort of rise to a lot of this criticism, that wasn't necessarily the case. It wasn't about people being emotionally upset, although there were aspects of that. It was about things that were being written that were racially offensive and based on untruths, and so misrepresenting what the facts might be. It's interesting, though, that in political debate, yes, people are going to get upset. But we're not talking necessarily about political debate issues. We're talking about some of the proponents, shall we say, of radical change to 18C are wanting a sort of carte blanche, but it seems to be a bit of a lopsided approach. They prefer to have the right to say what they like about anybody they like without any recourse. And I think 18C and the Racial Discrimination Act has provided a sort of a buffer against people just simply saying anything that they like without recourse to fact or logic.
We know this debate will go on. Jim, one very final question for you. A roll of the dice. Will it get through the Senate? And if so, will it be an easy run for the Prime Minister?
Well, it won't be an easy run, and I doubt that it will get through the Senate unless the Greens and the Labor Party get behind the Prime Minister on this one, which may or may not be the case. But the crossbench is so divided and fractious and of such mixed views around this, particularly Nick Xenophon's next party. They are not in favour of these changes as yet, or they don't see a need for the change as yet, and it would be up to Malcolm Turnbull to actually get them on side with it. At the moment, it doesn't look like the Senate is going to be on side. So even if he gets it through the lower house and gets his party on side, the Senate is maybe a step too far.
Yeah, read between the lines on that from the Prime Minister's point of view. If you would, Jim Judge, thanks for joining us this morning.
My pleasure, Mark.
We look forward to Jim next time around at 2NURFM 103.7.